Now, it's easily one of the most well-known and quoted sayings in the history of comic books, that with great power comes great responsibility, even though it's actually an old adage that can be traced back much, much further, and to many other sources before the 1962 comic book Amazing Fantasy 15 used it in the issue's last panel. An issue that is, of course, the very first appearance of Spider-Man, and where it's interesting to note that the line wasn't actually spoken by Uncle Ben there, at least not yet. That would be changed or attributed to him saying it to Peter later on, and has now kind of become the character's trademark saying. Either way here, no matter who said it first or when or exactly how it's been used or said over the ages, these certainly are some profound words that we should all try to remember as we go through life, that we should essentially exercise caution when wielding power of any kind, that our actions can have consequences on others, positive or negative. Which then takes us right into Star Wars and the battle of, or differences in philosophy between the Jedi and Sith. That the saying, with great power comes great responsibility, just might be the perfect way to, very simply and easily, describe the Jedi and their beliefs. That being gifted with the ability to use the Force comes with it a responsibility to use the Force in a way that helps people and serves a greater good beyond the self, which hopefully then inspires others to do better as well, to be more selfless. While on the flip side, the Sith hold a very different belief or view on power, the opposite, you could say. They believe that with having power inherently comes an obligation to use it to its fullest extent, that power not used is power wasted. They might even twist that classic saying into something more along the lines of, with great power comes the obligation to acquire even more or greater power, which can then be used to do anything from get more stuff, to gaining greater control or even influence over others. And I very intentionally used the word inspire for the Jedi and influence for the Sith, even though, yes, they are very similar in meaning, but I do believe influence can, in a way or at times, though not always, it can have a hint of a negative connotation around it, or imply some level of manipulation is or was possible. And thus I say Jedi try to inspire others for the greater good, a purpose beyond the self, while the Sith try to manipulate and or influence to get what they want out of others for their own good, just like Palpatine did, for example. And so I do find it maybe a bit interesting or ironic that in this day and age of the internet and social media, influencer has become an actual career title, I guess you could call it, that it's something many people desperately want to be, so much so that they will do nearly anything to make it happen. There are many out there who want to be famous and influence others, mainly for the sake of being famous and having the ability to influence others, not because of anything else they've actually done or are doing, not because of any type of good they've actually achieved or seek to achieve. And they then usually use this fame and influence to get more of it, more fame and influence as well as more stuff that makes their life better, or so it appears in the eyes of others, so that they can have even more stuff and be more admired, so that they can keep getting more and more influence and fame, and, well, I think you see the cycle here. Though in all fairness, yes, some influencers absolutely do good or even great things. They do use their power responsibly in some cases, but for everyone that sees it as a means to do good, there are countless others who see it as a means to only further their own goals, those who live life almost like Sith, who want power or stuff for the sake of having more and more power and stuff. Which maybe leads to the most ironic part about all of this for both Sith and influencers, that what they're actually doing or accomplishing, when you really stop and think about it, is influencing others to want the very same things out of life they have. They're basically encouraging others to not so much worship them, but to covet or crave the power, fame, and lifestyle they have for themselves. Their acquiring fame, fortune, and power is creating people who want what they have. They want that fame and fortune and everything else that goes along with it. People who will do whatever they have to do to then become them, or should I say to take their fame and replace them. You could almost even say their greed and desire to flaunt what they have in the sake of gaining fame and more attention is actually creating the very thing that will eventually replace or destroy them. And by now you might be wondering, where am I going with all this? What does this have to do with Luke and or Qui-Gon Jinn? Well, as you probably remember if you saw the Book of Boba Fett, and spoiler alert if you haven't, but in that series, Luke Skywalker gave Grogu a choice to be a Jedi or to go back to the Mandalorian. And in The Phantom Menace, Qui-Gon Jinn presented a similar choice to Anakin Skywalker. He let him know that training to be a Jedi was difficult and that if he succeeded, it'd be a hard life. And sure, he probably could have and should have gone a bit more into the details of what that meant what it really means to be a Jedi, or what would be expected of him as a Jedi, that it's not just wielding laser swords and freeing slaves, which I'm sure he would have if this wasn't a movie that was holding to a very tight runtime. I'm pretty sure he would have laid it out better, or did off-screen. But Qui-Gon did still give Anakin a choice. He would have respected Anakin deciding to stay with his mother, or if Shmi had refused to let her son go with him, even though she was all but encouraging Anakin to go because she understood all the good her son could do. She also made the hero's choice, you could say, of sacrifice over self, when she was willing to let go of the one and only thing she had in her life, that being her son. And this is why we call them heroes, not because what they have done or do or willing to do is easy, but because it is hard and not something all of us would be willing to do or able to do. Not all of us want to be heroes, or should I say not all of us are willing or able to make the choices they do, especially when push comes to shove or when the challenge is right in our face. Which, again, is part of the reason why we call them heroes and why we should, fictional or not, recognize and appreciate them, that they do what we cannot or will not. And this brings us right back to the choice Luke gave Grogu, which is a choice I've seen many people genuinely angered that Luke would make him pick. They say it's wrong or so unfair that Grogu can't have or be both, that of all the characters in Star Wars, of all the Jedi there have ever been, Luke should understand the importance of friends and family, and he shouldn't make Grogu pick between going back to the Mando and the life of a Jedi and then potentially never seeing his friend Mando ever again. But with great power comes that great responsibility, and sometimes there are things more important in life than what we want, personal things we need to set aside for a greater good, even if it sometimes means letting go of the things we want the most. This was certainly something Spider-Man or Peter Parker understood at the end of the movie No Way Home, when you consider all he gave up, the choice he made there. But Luke doesn't just expect or demand Grogu give up his friend or family for the greater good, just like Qui-Gon didn't demand it of Anakin, which is part of what makes them truly great Jedi, what makes them heroes or separates them, that they are willing to make the hard choices, the sacrifices that come with being a Jedi, but they don't automatically expect it out of others, that they, especially Luke, understand the value of friends and family, and that it's not something that you can demand be given up so quickly or easily. What Luke is basically asking is if Grogu can give up what he loves to potentially safeguard what others love and hold dear, which is a hell of a sacrifice to make. He's asking if he can give up his family to ensure other families aren't forced apart and destroyed by those who don't value such things, to stop those that value power above all else and who will stop at nothing to get it, taking and destroying whatever gets in their way. Which is the sad reality of why we often need heroes in the first place, why we need to ask some to give up everything, because there are those who refuse to give up anything, which might not seem fair, and maybe it's not, but that's what Luke is asking Grogu. Would you be willing to let go of what you love so that others don't have to have what they love taken away from them? And in Star Wars, like it or not, such sacrifices are needed from the Jedi. They need to be utterly selfless in order to counteract the Sith, who will be the very epitome of selfishness. And, story or not, we should not in any way pity the Jedi or feel bad for them. We should not in any way diminish their sacrifice, nor should we even begin to assume it makes them unhappy in the first place, or miserable, that they don't find fulfillment in a life of giving instead of taking. Which, yeah, might be a bit of a hard concept for some in our world to understand or grasp, that there are those who would rather inspire by giving than influence by taking, that giving up things and doing for others could actually make you happier than acquiring and doing only for yourself. And yes, don't get me wrong here, fictional heroes should always be relatable to us. We should be able to see a part of us in them. We should be able to connect with them on some level in order to actually be inspired by them, because there is something like us in them. That's the point of heroes in the first place, to inspire us to be better. And thus we should never ever lower their standards to fit our own failing or falling standards in order to feel better about ourselves and our choices. And a society that lowers the standards of their heroes is one destined to be ruled by villains. The purpose of a hero is not for them to be more like us, but for us to be more like them, even in our own small ways, to do a little bit better here and there whenever we can. Luke and Qui-Gon, maybe more so than any other Jedi we've seen, they understand this. They understand not everyone can be a hero or make the hard choices, but they don't expect them or demand them to, Instead, they ask if they can, and if they say no, they let them go and carry on, continuing to hold themselves to these higher standards. They still believe that with great power comes great responsibility, which is what makes them heroes in the first place, and what they must also ask of anyone else who would follow them or become Jedi, to hold themselves to these higher standards to inspire over just influence. Well, that's all I've got for this time. Now it's your turn to take to the comments below and tell me what you think makes a hero, and tell me how you feel about the Grogu-Luke choice. Whatever you think, leave those comments below. Let's talk some Star Wars. And until next time, thanks for watching.